I'm Sarah Nagle, and I've spent my career leading research and product development within some of the world's largest brands.
And I'm Chad Reynolds. I'm a serial entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Verve.
And this is AI Powered by People.
Each episode will dive into the latest AI developments and talk to an industry leader to help you better understand and utilize AI.
We'll take you inside some of the world's most famous companies and share examples of how AI is improving innovation, consumer engagement, media, and marketing.
No matter what industry you work in, we'll help you navigate one of the biggest disruptions to organizations and people today.
Hey, Chad, what's up? How are you doing?
Hey, Sarah. I'm doing good. We are gearing up for South by Southwest.
Yes,
so
we are.
For our listeners, we will be down there, like the 8th through the 13th. So I feel like we're like moving in there. So pack your bags. But we'll be podcasting all day long on Saturday from La Contessa. So if you are in and around South by, feel free to stop by or like LinkedIn us? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn us. We're on
Okay.
Instagram. Yeah, DM us.
But yeah, we've got like a fireside chat at Lambert's, talk about CPG and AI, but all day podcasting with a bunch of different guests. So if you're going to be in and around South by Southwest and would love to be on the pod, we'd love to have you. So please reach out. But it's gonna be a long day. Are you ready for this?
And kind of hot and a little bit different than here in New England where it's like 20 degrees. I think it's going to be like 70s or 80s. So I am very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just get ready for barbecue. Yeah, it'll be a jam-packed week. We got a lot of stuff. Looks like we're in a house together with like our full crew. It's going to be
like reality TV. It's going to be great. We're just going to post everything on Verve. It's going to be great the whole time.
Yeah, we got to set up one of those confessional rooms too. So, but yeah, get ready to bring the energy, Sarah. Bring it.
All right. Yeah, you too.
I'll try. You already know what you're going to get.
Coming up, we're going to be talking to Carla Diana, who is a roboticist, humanizing interactions between us and robots. But first, let's take a look at what's in the headlines. So first up, Apple is winding down the electric car effort. So for the last 10 years, they have created a team and they've been working on an electric car. So the team was called as of yesterday, Special Projects Group. And what's interesting about it is a lot of those folks that are leaving that team are moving over to the AI division, which is a key priority for Apple.
Yeah, so it looks like this business call is going to move around 2,000 people over into the AI teams. And according to The Verge, Apple's spending multiple millions of dollars each day to train their own AI models, which are called Ajax. Which is Ajax like a detergent?
It's a cleaning
agent.
It's like a scrubby like cleaning.
Okay,
yeah,
all right. Well, maybe they're going with the Association of Purity around that, but
clean design.
Yeah, this is a clean AI. But Apple CEO Tim Cook confirmed that they were going to be launching these generative AI features, later this year. Some speculation around the web as to where these Gen AI features will appear, most notably with Spotlight to kind of help you find your information or your files, and also an Xcode. Excited to see how that can help me on my MacBook where there are tons and tons of things on my desktop. I don't know about you.
I'm looking at mine right now. It's a mess.
Don't do it.
It's a mess. We're not going to screen share right now.
No.
Next, Alibaba has an AI called EMO, that makes pictures into videos. And EMO, we're not talking about Chad's music choices. We're talking about their new feature. So it is a groundbreaking technology. Emote Portrait Alive is a project developed by the Institute for Intelligent Computing at Alibaba, and it introduces an expressive audio-driven portrait. So some of the examples of what it creates are singing avatars and talking portraits. So I've been taking a look at some of this stuff. You see it like all over socials, and it has like Leonardo DiCaprio, or they have like images of him. And then you can, I think it's also related to the voice files that you attach to it. Yeah. So I think they were making, what's the gal from Breakfast at Tiffany's like a long time ago? You don't know the actress?
Molly Ringwald?
we'll just call it no, it's not her. But anyways, they have her, they have a Miley Cyrus song and have her singing Miley Cyrus. So there's some really interesting examples. But we could do still images of us, and
Yeah.
still images of you, and I could get you to say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, will this get me out of doing karaoke? That's what I really want to know.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. What is your karaoke song, by the way?
My karaoke song, I do Bonnie Raitt, "Something to Talk About," which is a little strange, but it's just
Yeah.
I
Where
kind
did
of
that
veer
come
country.
from? Why?
I don't know. I have an alto. Maybe my voice just kind of goes that
Huh.
way. I don't know.
All right.
I'm not a country. I don't love country, but I
Just when
like singing
karaoke
it.
comes out.
Yeah. What's yours?
I've always been a Johnny Cash fan. So
Makes
I
sense
know,
on many
boring. Yeah.
levels.
I know. So A Boy Named Sue. We'll do that one.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you bring in the outfit. All right. The next up, Tumblr and WordPress are planning to sell user data to train AI tools.
I did not know Tumblr still existed. Just kidding.
Tumblr and WordPress are gearing up to sell the data to Midjourney and OpenAI. And, we've heard about the New York Times that filed a lawsuit against OpenAI, for the unauthorized use of all of the archives to train the chatbots. And Automatic, the parent company of Tumblr and WordPress, is announcing a deal to be able to sell user data to OpenAI and Midjourney. It's significant because there's a huge value in user-generated content, and people are becoming more aware of how valuable their data is, but it's also like a little shady.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little weird. I mean, it feels like I gave you all my baseball cards and then you waited 10 years and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to sell these for millions and millions and millions of dollars without compensating the person who gave it to you. So
Yeah.
it feels a little off. We'll wait to see how this unfolds a little bit more. Hopefully give them the benefit of the doubt that there is some sort of incentive structure. I mean, I know we host our website, not necessarily our platform, but like our website on WordPress. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds, but it doesn't feel great at first glance. So
No, it doesn't. Last up, OpenAI. I love this title that I found. OpenAI might have found a body for ChatGPT's soul called Figure AI. So Figure AI raised $675 million. It's now valued at $2.6 billion, and it raised money from Jeff Bezos, NVIDIA, Microsoft, OpenAI, and their goal is to revolutionize commercial operations with humanoid robots. So set to tackle labor shortages and aiming to transform 10 million jobs in the U.S. alone.
yeah, and according to Financial Times, it plans to use the capital to scale up AI training, robot manufacturing, and hire a boatload more of engineers. So they struck an agreement with OpenAI to develop the next gen AI models for humanoid robots. It's just hard to say.
It is very hard to say.
It's not a nice word.
No, we need a new word.
Yeah, but they signed a deal around the AI infrastructure with Microsoft as well.
Microsoft is also hard to say.
Yeah, but it's better than humanoid. But yeah, I mean the bodies are coming. It obviously ties in really well with our guest.
Definitely.
This couldn't be a perfect lead in.
Carla Diana, who is a social roboticist that we're going to be speaking with. So that means she designs experiences like gestures and subtle movements of robots to better interact with humans. She also works at Cranbrook University. She started the 4D program, which we'll hear about. But I'm excited to hear more about what she does. This is a little bit different for us. We've been talking to a lot of people that have been talking about AI in kind of more the digital world. And this is the first person we've talked to that is transforming that in the physical world. You ready to go?
Let's go.
Well, Carla, welcome to the podcast. We are really excited about this conversation.
Cool. Me too.
And so you're calling in from Detroit right now. And last time we were chatting, you were at a hockey rink. So you're not at a hockey rink this time.
Not at a hockey rink today, but there is one on our campus actually. But I am not there. I am in my studio at the Cranbrook Academy of Art technically it's suburban Detroit.
One of the things, Carla, is I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your book. So My Robot Gets Me. And just because I'd say like when you published it, it had a kind of like a shelf life, no pun intended, of
Mm-hmm.
of an audience, and then as like ChatGPT essentially commercialized or consumerized, I should say better,
Mm-hmm.
AI, robotics, and a little bit more, you had a lot more interest in it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about I'm curious about that book and some of the common themes within it that we'd love to dig into a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely. I had had this career of working in product design and then working squarely in robotics. And during that whole time, also sharing out some of the things that I was discovering because it's so new for designers. So there were new methodologies that I was having to work on, well, at places like Smart or in my consulting work and in my teaching. And so I realized that there weren't any courses in what I was calling smart object design. So I was brought on as part of the founding faculty at School of Visual Arts in their Products of Design program. And what I had created there was designing smart objects. And that's really what the book is all about. It's about this idea that I had been getting excited about because I had worked on social robots
Right.
in academia and almost got these goosebumps realizing that this interaction I was having with the robot felt so visceral and natural and
Yeah.
like nothing I'd ever experienced with a product. But I could see that we designers could grab elements of that. Like, could we just grab an element of the robot nodding, and put that in this microphone or
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
some way, right? Like these gestures. And so, I started creating these courses, and then I had tons of case studies around it, so ultimately wrote the book that was a summary of 10 years of work
Yeah.
of learning about social robotics, applying it in this very highly specialized hospital robot, and then thinking about the potential to apply it in
Yeah.
everyday objects.
Yeah. So one of those stories was around Moxie, right?
Oh, yeah.
The hospital robot. And I think there's a lot of learnings in that, especially around, like bumping into people and saying, excuse me, and just really understand the context of, even like why we are naming robots. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, like, if you could share a little bit more about, some of those learnings around that.
There's tons that we can apply from social robotics, which seems like it's crazy stuff happening in an academic laboratory. But and really what I get at in the book is let's pull apart some of those things that we can learn from those academic studies and apply to everyday objects. So, some of the things are just natural communication, right? And the biggest challenge, I think, for designers is to not take this idea of natural communication literally. Like, we don't need everything. Like, the robots we worked on in the lab had eyeballs and eyelids and could nod and had fingers and that's great for studying, but is not necessary and is not my view as a product designer. It's what people think about when they get this sci-fi vision
Hmm.
of what robots should be. But some of the things that apply directly are around, like, certainly, I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book is presence. And when you talk about just the physical presence of the robot, or if you go into an airport and you need help and there's a kiosk, like that physical presence, that's the physical embodiment of the brand, right?
Hmm.
So how does that relate to a person's body, relate to where they are in space, relate to how is it welcoming, is it communicating? And and then some of the literal things, like with the Moxie robot, we are literally using, and really the value proposition for the company is the social interaction and not needing, ultimately not having somebody need to train a robot or learn to train a robot. And but just in everyday use, right, there's the difference between, like, the robot can say hello and acknowledge someone, then the robot can also say excuse me if it happens to get too close.
Right.
And and then like some of the things that I had been mentioning were it can know, you can know there is a head that moves and there are these abstracted eyes, and you can know if the robot, if you have many people, like which person is the robot talking to, or if there's a spill or something that happens, this shared gaze. And the other things that I think about and that I write about in the book are this idea of an abstracted language. So yes, Moxie does use words, but Moxie also has what we call them in the cup, we call them meeps, that are, abbreviated ways of communicating. And so I really talk about these methodologies, encourage designers to break down whatever messages need to happen between the object and the person,
Yeah.
like your coffee is ready, or the browning phase of the oven is happening, or the chandelier needs to welcome your guests, like whatever those things are. Right, identify moments of communication and then figure out how those translate. And the ways that I look at that are sound, light, and movement. And light can be a screen, like light is ultimately a collection of pixels on a screen, or it can be really subtle, right? So knowing, like, if somebody and it's very cultural too, like in our culture, when we see a flashing red light, it means something's wrong. So that's something that you can communicate in a split second and then guide people to what they need to do with the product.
Carla, can you talk about the approach you take when you're trying to learn about this interaction, the social interaction between humans and robots? Like, what is that, just so people can get an understanding of how you think about that?
Well, the first starting point is absolutely talking to stakeholders, and just gathering as much information as possible. And then, and the main thing that I'm trying to identify there are scenarios, are, who is the key person that's going to be using whatever this robot, and what are the key tasks that need to happen, and from there figure out scenarios. So from in the hospital robot, for example, it may be there's all kinds of scenarios. I mean, there may be a time that it needs to be that there'll be a robot in the OR that's assisting a doctor, that's handing, and so identifying those. And then what I like to do, that I think is really one of the key exercises, is body storming. So,
What
you know,
is that?
yeah, so it's embodied brainstorming, right? So it's feels like you're in kindergarten because you're pretending and playing with cardboard, essentially. But like, for example, one of the things that we did at Diligent was I had folks get together and talk, and we had folks, also somebody who was a nurse, people who had firsthand knowledge of what it feels like in those environments. And we had one person play the role of the robot, and then we had one person play the role of the nurse, and one person play the role of the pharmacist, and then we actually make a mock environment. So can we, with boxes and cardboard, suggest the shelves or actual shelves, like whatever there is there in hand, but we did it in the office. And we also get lots of people who are on the team involved. Like, we get the engineers involved. We certainly get the researchers involved. We get the software folks involved, and we act out these scenarios. So we might even, and as quick and dirty as possible, right? Like, you're really getting at the interaction. You're not getting at the the design, right? You're not drawing the robot. You're really getting at like, what is the social interaction? What needs to happen? And so, we'd have a nurse, and we'd have, maybe a mock-up of what a kiosk might be like. And then we'd actually have, Post-its on someone's head who is the robot, and like, what is the robot actually doing now? The robot's flashing blue and is sitting in a corner because it's not connected to Wi-Fi, or like whatever it is, and we go through those, and I'll take photographs of them or take video of it, and then and take copious notes, and then go back to the studio and do storyboards as if it's in a film, and really lay out, well, here's the storyboard for the pharmacy fetching scenario. Like, here's the storyboard for the patient needs a blanket. Here's the storyboard for the patient is post-operative and, needs a kit of supplies to be delivered, but needs tons of nursing care, and just identify those and work through it. And then, what's exciting is everyone in the company knows about body storming. Like, they'll even now that the robot is developed and being shipped to customers, they'll say, oh, we're having an issue with nobody hears the robot when it comes around the corner. Maybe we should body storm what that behavior should be. And, so I'll come in and do workshops periodically to examine those. And we're planning one for this summer, actually, up here. I'm going to have folks come in and visit us with this site here, and talk to the nurses, and talk, now that the robot's in this like more mature state, and talk about, what do they need on a day-to-day basis. And then we'll go back and workshop how we can address it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun to be there to work, and also how you might change meetings. I mean, even if teams are working through different scenarios together, it's usually just PowerPoints and documents, but just getting it up to like act out the scenario. And
But also, with like, the traditional design thinking process is just really different, because like, as a researcher, we're have this process to help us interact with maybe something that's like a static object, so it could be like a toothbrush that doesn't have a personality, but it becomes really different when the object on the other end has a personality that's going to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to approach it really differently.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, and just constantly thinking about how to challenge our own beliefs. And I see this constantly with every aspect. There's always this tendency as designers to think about the thing, to think about drawing the thing, or drawing the form, or and it's so much more important to draw the experience. Like, that's really when you're designing the heart and soul of whatever it is. And yes, it may ultimately manifest in this. I have this microphone in front of me, or this mouse, but it's more about like I always tell the students, the very first frame in that storyboard should, maybe it doesn't even have the object in it at all. It's just, you're trying to capture where that person is, how they feel, how do they first approach this experience or object.
Yeah, so one of the things that I know Sarah and I spend a tremendous amount of time on right now is just I guess, looking at the future of not only AI, but also how it's being experienced by other people, whether it's on screen or through objects. This idea of these agents, or like team members that you can, design, create around you to help you with your work. And as we were going through it, just put this out there and see your reaction to it. Would you imagine reading a headline that said, like in 10 years time, it says, that AI agents now make up 50% of a company's workforce? Where is that headline right? And where might it be completely wrong?
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So, I mean, so my philosophy around all of this is that it's technology, and they are tools, and they're tools that are meant to help people. And, one of the, so I don't know, your question's kind of big. So like, I'm not really sure if I'm thinking about, like, my brain's going all over the place. I mean, one of my particular areas of interest right now, because I am in suburban Detroit, is autonomous vehicles. And and one of the things that I get asked a lot, and that people are really, tender about, our jobs. Are, you talk about autonomous vehicles, and then does that mean that all of these jobs are going to be taken away? So I can definitely see in 10 years that, most vehicle operation jobs would be handled by an AI agent. Like, I think that then that AI agent, and you'll summon it, and you'll be communicating with the AI driver. I'm going to the ball game. I'm running late. Where's the closest communal stop?
Right.
For, and, my excitement around that is so large, because I'm in a city where everyone is isolated in their private vehicles, and it's time consuming, it's polluting, it's expensive for families. And I'd like to see shared public transportation that gets us out walking, that gets us out talking to each other, that opens green spaces and that kind of thing. And when people ask me about the jobs question, so like, now we've got all of those jobs are replaced. Yes, because I think there are many more valuable jobs that can happen in those vehicles. For example, my son gets picked up by a bus driver for school every day. I think that bus absolutely can use a human being sitting with the kids in the bus, as opposed to driving the bus. I think that, delivery robots can be helping people on the street, that can be helping people, and there can be people that need to be the go-between, that are going upstairs. I think there's so much, like, the Moxie is just, I think, a perfect example. Like, that nurse wants to hold that patient's hand, like, that's where that nurse is most valuable. Like, that's really, human work, right? And I think that it's, what's highly problematic is again, it's a shift in thinking. We need to be a society that distributes resources, and like, can we have the same number of jobs, but make them better jobs that help people?
Yeah, it just seems like a shifting of all the tasks. So, I mean, my dad was in a hospital for a year, so I had lots of opportunities to sit next to him and experience it. And, the amount of time that the nurse was in the room, compared to when she or he was interacting with my dad,
right?
I had to put, like, maybe at like less than 5% of the time, which, if I had to reallocate that experience, redesign that experience, it would be spending time talking, like finding the human connection, right? And I think the same thing is like in that bus driver situation.
Right.
Do you want it to be heads down driving the bus, or like interacting with people? And it feels like, again, like kind of merging a bunch of different trends together, with like the loneliness epidemic and all this thing, is like technology could actually help us connect better as people, to remove us from that, like, heads down stance.
Right.
We need to maintain the authenticity, though, but it sounds like that's what you're bringing, is that, like, those authentic, like, mannerisms and conversation and kind of the human qualities to a robot, which are really important too. All right, well, let's get to your 4D program. We've been talking a little bit about it. I want to hear more about, what is the 4D program? When did it start? Why did you start it? And more of that.
Yeah. So it's definitely a passion project that I'm in the midst of right now. I had this passion for creating physical things that had digital behaviors, and there was no pedagogy or guidance around that. So I had created these courses, like I mentioned, and I taught it at School of Visual Arts. I taught at University of Pennsylvania for 3 years. I had brought it to Parsons, and there was a time, and I was at Parsons, and an email came in, and I had just started at Parsons actually, that said, we're, I've Cranbrook Academy of Art is starting a 4D design. And the person writing me the email didn't realize I was an alum. Starting a department that's called 4D design. They like to bring a few people in to talk about what that might be and apply to create it. And so it was a really great moment for me, because I just felt like, I mean, these moments, when you're younger, you kind of like try to do everything. And then as you get further in your career, you just feel like, no, this is my thing. So, the courses I'd been teaching were wonderful, but they were always electives, or there were things that students would do on the side. I only had them for 3 hours a week. And this was a chance to create a program that was squarely focused on this digital physical design, it as a 2-year Master of Fine Arts focused program. And the way that Cranbrook is structured is it's created for students who are very self-motivated. Every student gets a studio space. It's focused around project work and critique. And many students live on campus. There's dormitories. And so there is a ethos of living and working in your studio, and just a drive to really make that the central focus. It is a full residency program, and we have a kitchen here. Students eat together, they work together. And so it was a chance to really have this super focused energy that was more of a full-time thing, rather than dipping into people's lives in a short-term way. And what I had presented as the vision for the program was what I was already practicing, which was, let's look at interaction design, but let's approach it from a holistic point of view, where we're thinking about the way that I define the Cranbrook has this rich history in craft. A lot of people know us because of Charles and Ray Eames and their exhaustive experiments in bent plywood. A lot of that work happened here when they were like really creating new ways to use materials. And then there have been countless other folks who have come through here. So I knew that this was a place that valued craft, that valued materiality, that valued thinking about the nuance of this form as opposed to that form. So the program is focused on our craft is form, code, and electronics. So everyone is able to open up a 3D modeling program, at least have some understanding of, and build. Like I have students work with physical tools and build physical things. And then we work with microcontroller platforms to be able to use sensors, motors, and those kinds of things. So we work with a platform called Arduino, or Raspberry Pi as the need, but everyone does a little bit of Arduino, so they do a little bit of electronics. Everyone learns to solder, and everyone learns a little bit of code. So form, code, and electronics that manifest in sound, light, and movement, which is what I talk about in my own practice. So the everything that we do, again, we're not just thinking about the object. We're thinking about this fourth D. Everyone says, what's the fourth D? The fourth D is time. So everything that we're focused on has some dynamic characteristic. And by that, I mean, it might be like lights that change, or where you can't just draw the object and capture what the work of the designer is. What you need to do is, capture it in videos, and do all these kind of techniques we talked about, right. The storyboarding, the body storming, even video sketching we didn't talk about, but all of those kind of things. So it was, I came here in 2018. I had a year to set the vision and kind of travel and spread the word about the program. And, by 2019, we welcomed our first cohort. So I just graduated this will be the fourth cohort that will graduate this coming May. So
that's great.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you're shaping, I'd say the minds of the like younger people, like the next generation of people who might be in this workforce. What advice would you give to people who are in, like, I know like my interactions with robots, like even just going to like Vegas and at the Sphere, they've got the, I don't know
Oh
if you've
yeah,
been and seen the
I have not seen
postcards
this.
from Earth. So the whole lobby is full of robots that you can interact with.
Yeah.
It was just a really interesting interaction to
Field trip.
see how they're like how robots are manifesting within that. It definitely feels more like sci-fi Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. And so I'm just curious, like in the spectrum of those types of manifestations of robots versus some of the kind of like virtual ones or even Moxie.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious, what examples you're seeing in the world that maybe go over your your line, that kind of step over and get out of the kind of human factors of what you seeing being successful within the world today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. There's certainly a lot of robot as novelty right now. It's a hard question. I mean, I think it really, I always challenge students with any kind of electronics to ask, what the benefit is. What is the benefit over, what is the benefit of this electronic water bottle over one that isn't? And, they have to really come up with research that supports a real need. Um,
So when do,
and
Carla, when do you get to this point where you want to name it? So just curious, because like usually those are the, I don't know, like the threshold of like naming your car, right? Or naming,
I,
obviously you name your pet, but like when you start to name other objects in your life, or that their toothbrush like takes on, it's kind of like I want to say like a robot form, but it takes on a personality in your life. I'm just curious of like when you're seeing those things start to happen, um, and is it at that point that you're starting to give them abilities or tasks as you're going through that?
I think that um, I mean, that's a really philosophical question. I think, I mean, I see it happen when things um, can move around the space by themselves,
Mm-hmm.
So, um, because a lot of the early social robotics work, there were no robots in the field. And so people were studying the Roomba. And, even if you go and look at, um, Amazon reviews of the Roomba, people say, "Oh, our robot, we named him Ken. He's under the couch," or like Susie's such a great worker, and it's kind of like, wow, like that thing, like it doesn't even like, it's not designed to be social. Although we worked on one of smart design that we then started like
Yep.
actually intentionally
Yeah.
making it social. But like that was just so interesting to me, because and even the movement's not particularly
It's more like a pet.
crafted, and
It's kind of like a
it's
pet in the home.
yeah, but then when I think about some of our conversational agents, um I don't like to say them on podcasts because they make like SIRI, let's say. I mean, that's a name, right? And people,
Right.
because I also think it is communicating with voice, like, literally something that sounds
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
human voice, so it makes sense that we would name it. But there is something about the autonomous movement, about something that can make its own decisions
Mm-hmm.
about moving around the space, that I think makes us see it as an entity. I mean, I have a chart that I like to encourage both, clients and students to and myself to think about. That's this continuum that goes from prosthetic to friend, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, and most things are kind of in between, but they tip one way or another. So, is this thing by prosthetic? I mean, I use prosthetic in a really broad term, like a camera is a prosthetic in a way. Like, but is it a tool or is it a friend? Like, or is it other? Is it tool or other? And you can think about that then deliberately, like, oh, if it's a tool, let's design it so that it feels like it's an extension of the body, or it's natural, or you wear it, or you keep it, you hang it in a place. Or if it's other, yeah, let's design it so that it sort of exaggerates these social characteristics.
Carla, what do you say to people, like maybe the people that aren't as familiar with robots or AI? What do you say to them that they're hesitant about using it, based on what they're seeing in Hollywood? Because there's some, we had mentioned some of the scary things you see. What do you say to them?
I mean, I'm actually, one of the things I write about in the book is that I'm actually interested in how we don't, as designers, we don't intentionally make things mimic humans. I think that we can actually design things so that they feel natural, but that we communicate clearly that they're an AI. Like, I do think, like, there was I think Google had done a demo once, Google Duplex, and it was just really unsettling for people, where they called a hair salon and pretended to be a person. I think it's much more valuable to give clues. And some of the folks that I interviewed for the book talked about this as well. Like, I interviewed Jonathan Foster, who was the head writer for and the lead of the project around the communication for Cortana. And, he talked about, just intentionally dropping things in to conversation that let people know, well, I'm an AI, or, even maybe some characteristic of the voice. There was another company that I spoke to the CEO of, a company called Eliq, that makes this software it makes this physical companion for a tablet for people with cognitive challenges, so that there's this kind of talking head that's near this tablet that says, "Oh, you have an appointment today. Can you," so that they can do a deeper dive with this coaching. And he also talks about intentionally having everything about the interface. It's where design is. It's what's hard about it. Like, it's this nuance between being natural enough that somebody can just talk to it, but not so natural that you feel like you've been duped.
Mm-hmm. Well, Carla, that's all the time that we have for the podcast today. But where can people find out about the 4D program?
Yeah, so they can go to cranbrookart.edu. That's our website. That's the main thing. Or we also have an Instagram account, which is at Cranbrook4D.
Awesome.
Just the number 4D, all one word, Cranbrook 4D. And then I always have whatever I'm up to. Sometimes I have it on my website, which is just carladiana.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. This was great. Well, Chad, that was a fun interview. What were some of your takeaways from that?
I think because this was one of our first where we got into more of like, how does AI manifest as a physical object? Even though I tried to put that on the otter team with like little mini otter. But I think when you're thinking about AI, not only can it work through screens, kind of the 2-dimensional, but also the kind of 3 and 4-dimensional, where it's bringing it to life. And while most people might think that it's kind of like programming engineering that you would jump to first to come up with those kinds of solutions,
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the very practical techniques like body storming and just going through and acting out, or going through an experience and kind of interviewing one another to see how you're, like, what you're doing, how's it feel, why is this important, and how you're supposed to behave and act within those different contexts are really interesting as you're thinking about applying AI in the physical world,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the screen. So I know that was a lot of your background.
Yep.
So curious your take as well.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I think, after reflecting on it too, it's kind of the best way to be able to understand how to design for the robot. Like what, other techniques that kind of actually take the human into account. It does feel like the best way
Yeah.
to be able to understand how to think about light and how to think about sound. And, she was talking about like subtle movements of the eyes and things like that. You have to experience it to be able to design for it and understand like what feels right, which doesn't. Her talking about kind of this real designing for the social experience, which
Right.
I thought
Yeah.
was really cool. And yeah, I remember her kind of tinkering when we were both at Smart Design and things like that with like Nito Robotics. She had mentioned it. Whereas like a robot vacuum and thinking about those like just like little subtle elements of the experience that mean a lot,
Yeah.
when you're interacting with
Yeah.
it.
Definitely feels like a shift from like design thinking and more about this design living, and how multiple AIs or kind of in your life, in your experience, and designing things around how you want people to feel. So fascinating. I love
It
it.
was really cool. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of AI Powered by People. The show is produced by Steve Berkowitz and brought to you by Verve. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next Tuesday.
See you later, guys.